Welcome back, everybody. I am really pleased, and I've been looking forward to talking with Madison Aichele. She is the executive director at Calla Press Publishing, and she is a friend of our community, and she works with Lara, and we have a few mutual connections that connected us, and I've just really enjoyed getting to know Madison. So thank you, Madison, for being with us today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, and props to you for getting my last name right. I
I
feel
did
like
it. I know I practiced right before we hit record, but I got it right. So yeah, I'm so glad that you're here. And I just wanted to, we know your name and where you work, but wanted to give you the opportunity to tell us a little bit more about you and what you do, where you live, all those fun things.
Yeah, of course. Well, like you said, my name is Madison Eichel, and I live in the Nashville, Tennessee area with my musician husband. Of course, he's a musician, and a sweet little cat named Ella. And about 3 or so years ago, the Lord prompted me to leave my full-time marketing job, which is what my background is, to pursue creative dreams. And, and for lack of better terms, it's been quite the twisty path. And through this process of pursuing a dream and really following after God, He's grown in me just this belief and passion and calling to do what I call stewarding the stories. And so that's really turned into a passion to write, which comes through my own personal writing, through my Instagram, and I also write over on Co-Creatives Collective, which is my Substack. And it's essentially kind of the same heart of this community as well, where I do believe that faith and creativity intertwine. And it's important for me to really kind of foster those connections because community is so important just in these creative industries. It can get really tough if you're writing this out alone. And so, yeah, just always appreciate spaces that go deeper like this one. And I am also blessed to steward the stories through Calapress. I am about to hit my 1 year anniversary there, which is so exciting. So, yeah, I'm grateful just to champion creative dreams and the dreamers that God gives them to. And I'm blessed to be able to do that through a lot of different avenues with my writing, and just through my professional career now with Calapress as well.
Oh, I love that. Well, first of all, congratulations on getting to almost a year mark. That's exciting. And I loved that you said that you consider it a stewardship issue of stewarding stories. And I love that. And it seems like the Lord opened the door for you to be in just the right place because it seems that's exactly what Calipress does. They put out such beautiful work and art, really both in the written form and visual form. It feels like that is really part of the vision and of what you guys are doing. So that's really cool that that's what you're doing. And so I'm curious, as the executive director of that publishing house, what does your work look like? What's a day in the life look like for you in your work?
Yeah, well, it can look different day to day. It's a lot of managing projects and different deadlines. But essentially, I would describe it as shepherding projects from the query to publication. So I manage making sure that this book moves through every single part of the process smoothly. I'm the point of contact for authors as well as they move through that process, which can hold a lot, as I'm sure many of you know, either from experience or just research, you know what's coming if you publish a book. So the query, signing the contract, which is exciting, and then some of the less exciting things like the editing process. I make sure all of that kind of makes it to our team. And yeah, essentially, like I said, just shepherding and making sure it goes from one point to another and being sure that our authors as well just feel really cared for. That's something that I'm blessed to be able to do. And as well, I mean, you talked about Lara. I have such a wonderful team who I get to manage and oversee, but they do such an incredible job of doing the same thing, of just ensuring that authors feel really cared for as they move through the process. So, yeah, it can look a little bit different day to day depending on where we are in the process, but it's really fun to do. And yeah, just a very comprehensive, big overview. It's essentially what I do. Just make sure it keeps moving along.
Yeah, yeah, it does seem like it's kind of a your hand is kind of on the whole project from start to finish from what you described. So we titled the name of this conversation is "Piercing the Veil: What Publishers Wish More Writers Knew." And so, and when you think about that title and kind of the work that you do behind the scenes, a lot of that sometimes feels a little mysterious to writers, especially when they're submitting their very, precious words. What can you tell us about that process that maybe we might not have already known, especially like when it comes to like what you wish writers knew that would make your life easier in that process?
Mm. It's such a good question, and I honestly think that answer could go in so many different directions. Um, but something that's really on my heart is this quote from Pierre Teilhard de Chardin. I'm probably butchering the name. And he has this prayer called Patient Trust. And if you haven't read
Mm,
it or heard it, please go find it. It is so beautiful. But there's this one particular portion that gets me, and it's your ideas mature gradually. Let them grow. Let them shape themselves without undue haste. Don't try to force them on as though you could be today what time, that is to say, grace and circumstances acting on your own goodwill, will make of you tomorrow.
mm,
And something that I feel like I see a lot of, especially in the beginning process, are ideas that weren't allowed to mature and grow gradually. I think we get really excited when we get this idea and we kind of have that momentum of, oh, let's just put all of this together and let's submit it and see what happens. And sometimes that does work for people, but I think there's something very important about taking time. And even with our editing process, we take time um, just to make sure that authors are saying what they want to say. Um, yeah, and just making sure that the ideas of tomorrow are able to kind of come through in the work that they're doing. And that's something that I just really want to encourage writers with because I am as
mm.
guilty as the next person of just getting so excited and just rushing ahead. And God has been very gracious and kind to show me the importance of slowing down, especially with something like a book that's going to be published, something you can hold, it's going to exist in that form for a very, very long time. You really want to get it right and make sure you're being thoughtful and slow. And so I know it's hard to hear wait or to allow yourself to have some more clarity over time. But I think books are just like us. There are these living things living inside of us. And so they grow and change just like we do. And it's okay to let those ideas change, even if it's hard to let go of that original seed that got you to write the thing. But it is important, I think, just to let things grow and take time and let it be like just be okay with essentially it taking longer than you want it to. That's something that I really think I want people to know. Is it's okay to let things take time and to move slowly.
Ugh, that's such a good word. It's such a good word to me at this very moment. I think that it is really hard for us. We live in such a fast pace, drive through culture and mindset. Like we think that this work of writing and putting our words out into the world should just come easily, or that those ideas don't take time to kind of ruminate and percolate. There's a Latin phrase that's called festina lente, which is it means make haste slowly. And I've always loved that idea too. It's like hurry up but slow down at the same time. Like those two things can kind of work paradoxically together. And so, but those are the things that frustrate us, right? As writers, we kind of want to get it perfect right away, and the good things take some time. So that is really cool. Thank you for sharing that with us. Um, so when you are looking at, submissions, and you mentioned earlier that that is part of the work that you do, what is it about that process that, especially maybe in light of what you just mentioned about letting things take time, do you see that writers are often hasty in kind of sending out half-baked ideas, or maybe they haven't like fully thought through the implications of if this then that kind of issues? Is that kind of what you're meaning, or do you see other things like things that they could shore up better in their writing and in their submissions?
Yeah, I definitely can see some, even if the idea is good, you can tell that they maybe haven't thought through a way to drill down a little bit. And that is the pesky question. I have disliked that question all my writing life of what's your target audience? I'm like, I don't know. I want to write to people.
Yeah.
And there's something so beautiful about that. I don't think you should limit yourself, but especially with a book, they're generally not written to everybody. And if you are writing to everybody, you could actually end up connecting less to the people you would like to write to. I think we relate to personal stories and personal experiences much better than something that is general. And it seems like that should be more relatable if you can cover more ground. But I think when we can be honest with ourselves about this is my particular experience, and I think other people will see something in this too. I think that really helps because, yeah, there are so many of these ideas that come in and there's something there. And even if I read the sample, there is something there. It's not like it's a bad submission, but because they're writing so broadly and they haven't taken that extra time to go deeper into, well, who can I talk to? The idea can just not be quite right or not quite ready. So I think that's really important. Following directions as well. You wouldn't think that that would be good guidance, but
Yeah.
it is. It makes it stands out. Makes it stand out because there are so many submissions that come in that just don't quite follow instructions. And it's okay if you miss one or two things. We're all human, so we always leave room for human error. But people, you can tell, completely disregard or didn't read the submissions page that we have for queries. And so that's, I think, just something that's really important is you can be thorough about following those directions. And, each publishing house or agent will have their own kind of specifications, but it's really important and helpful. We can definitely see a difference in people who have taken their time and making sure that their submissions follow those processes, that it has all the information we've asked for. Um, and grammar, if you're submitting samples, grammar is very helpful to pay attention to. Again, human error. It's okay if there are one or two things, but we have had some submissions where it's just riddled with grammatical errors, and that gives us a clear view of how much work we're going to have to do for our editing team. Um, and I think it's just such a big thing. Again, human error, but if it's riddled with it, especially for me as a reader, it's more distracting from the substance of the book, even if that book is really good. So those are just some quick things just to kind of keep in mind as you submit. I also always really enjoy a layer of thoughtfulness too. I think especially as writers, we can get frustrated with feeling like we're a number, right? We think people are looking at our platform and all those things. That's true. Publishers do look at that. But a lot of the guidance for writers is to turn around and treat the publishing industry the same way. Whether they're submitting queries like in batches, whatever that thing is. And my personal preference is just to make sure that if you are doing that, make sure there's a level of thoughtfulness to it of that this person is on your list because they'd be a good fit for XYZ. We have had submissions where people have used the wrong names, the wrong publishing house names, and
Oh, ouch.
to me,
Yeah.
that kind of just send the wrong message of, oh, this is just a copied and pasted email. And so
Yeah.
I do appreciate just that extra mile of here's a line, but why I think this is a good fit for your specific publishing house. That's really helpful too.
Yeah. You touched on a lot of things. You talked about vulnerability. You talked about fleshing out ideas. You talked about attention to detail, following directions, um, and thoughtfulness. I think all of those things were just really, I mean, it's funny, like you said, that we need to be reminded about that. But like for us, like we have to remember there are humans on the other end of that email, on the other end of that submission. And so to be mindful and thoughtful of how it's being seen through their eyes, like just little things like a grammar spell check can go a long way, right? Yeah, so when I looked on your site, I spent quite a bit of time on the Calla Press site recently, and it looks like you guys, I don't know if this is just right now in this season of where you're at. It looks like you're doing a lot of children's books. You also mentioned you look for fiction and nonfiction, obviously in the Christian space. But could you tell us a little bit more about that? Like uh, what kind of things you're specifically looking for now?
Yeah, I mean, right now we're pretty open as far as genre. I think obviously anything that contradicts our Christian values, we won't look at. And we're not accepting poetry manuscripts. But other than that, we're pretty open to how God is telling stories through people. Whether that's through children's books, which we do ask or come to us pre-illustrated. Or if it's memoir or historical fiction, we are pretty open to that. And it doesn't even have to be explicitly Christian, but we do keep an eye out for strong Christian messages, things that inspire and equip and encourage readers, and continue to infuse those values. I mean, we have a lot of really exciting things coming up. We have obviously a wonderful partnership, like you noticed, with Jeff and Angela Knox, who have created beautiful books like Harriet Hare. um, Lara, we have a young adult novel coming out from her, which will be really exciting. So we are very open. I think you'll see a lot of variety coming out in the coming year or so. But yeah, we're fairly open. Again, as long as it's really kind of tied into the Christian faith and has that strong message and shows that you are seeing your writing through that lens of stewardship. I think those are the messages in the books that really stand out to us.
That's good. Yeah, it's neat. It just seems like right now there were a lot of Christian, um, I'm sorry, children's books, but yeah, I'm sure that you have just a real wide variety coming up. And tell us a little bit about what your submission windows look like, because I do think you have one coming up soon in November, right?
Yeah, we are opening up our submissions in November, which I'm really excited about. And it's pretty straightforward and simple. So the easiest way to know that our submission window's open is either to subscribe to our CalaPress Substack or follow us on Instagram, where we'll share that it's open. But essentially, you will look through our query process on our website, and it will tell you who to send the email to, what information needs to be in the email. And that will give you all the information you need about what you need to gather, what materials you need, and even what we'll be looking for afterward. Because typically, once you send that email, we try to get back to people within 1 to 2 months. Sometimes it's a little bit longer if it's really crazy. But we'll typically ask for more sample material and then from there move into sending a contract if we think it's a good fit. But yeah, essentially, it's really just being sure that you have all of that information in place already compiled. And so you can submit that email directly to the CalaPress website and email, and then we will get back to you and hopefully partner with you.
That's exciting. Do you guys have any sort of limit to the number of things that you're looking for, or do you just kind of base that off of what you receive? In other words, like if somebody has a nonfiction writing book proposal, are you only taking a couple of those per submission window, or do you just kind of look at what you receive and make your decisions based on what you think might work for you?
Yeah, right now, we just look at what comes to us and we're very prayerfully led as well. We really kind of pray over, well, what are the books that God wants us to share through our publishing house right now? And obviously that's worked out more to um, children's books, especially because we've had such strong partnerships, but we also have a lot of variety coming up, which is really nice with young adult. Fiction, and then we also have historical fiction, a few historical fiction books that are coming out that are going to be really exciting. So we don't have a limit right now. I'm sure we will at some point as we grow, but at the moment it's very prayerfully led and more of an open discussion as we kind of read through submissions when they come in.
I think writers like to hear that, so that's good news. Um, So kind of maybe the elephant in the room, and Carrie asked this question too. I think so many times writers feel intimidated by the whole platform issue. And so how important is that to you all? Like, are you looking for a minimum number of email subscribers or things like that? Or are you all more looking at kind of a trajectory of a writer's platform, consistency, things like that?
Yeah. I mean, I think our heart is that God asks people to tell stories, and not all of us have the same experience or comfortability with marketing. And so we don't have a minimum number that we're looking at for a platform. We really are genuinely looking for, like, is the author following after God? And do they have a really important story to tell? And do we believe in that story? And so I think for us, we do ask, I think it's in our contract as well, that an author would be willing to talk about their book. We do want them to do some marketing, and we hope that they would want to do some marketing as well, just in getting the word out there. But we're not deterred by platform. We don't believe God abides by those numbers in the way that people do. And so we do truly look for, well, is this a message that we believe in? Is this a partnership that we think is important? And then we just obey God and just steward those stories that He asks us to steward.
How refreshing. That's awesome. What about agents? Do you accept unagented proposals or books?
That's a great question. We do accept unagented books.
It's a mouthful,
Yeah.
isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry to say that. It's like, oh, yeah, you don't have to have an agent. We are open to anybody. So we just don't believe in having those same barriers. It is still competitive, obviously, especially if you open it up, we will have a lot of submissions. So I think that's part of just the importance of making sure your idea is ready and your book
Yeah.
is ready. But yeah, we don't believe in having those same barriers. We truly believe in writers, and we want to champion those dreams and those dreamers that God is calling up and out. And so, yeah, it's okay if you don't have an agent. I know those are all really scary
Yeah,
elements to deal with.
they can be.
Yeah.
Well, that's really encouraging. I think you've given us a lot to think about. And I want to give the ladies on this call an opportunity to, hopefully, we've covered the biggies, but maybe not. So I would love to hear if you guys have any other questions. You can type them in the chat or unmute.
Hi, Madison.
Hi.
This is so wonderful to hear, so encouraging. I just love hearing the heart behind this publishing company that just really seems to want to help Christian writers get their story out there. And it is so, so cool because I love the way God works because I just finished reading this book by Jared C. Wilson called The Storied Life. And he talks about stewarding the story, capital T, capital S. And this morning I woke up a little bit intimidated to start my morning writing process. And the phrase that went through my mind was just steward the story. I'm working on a novel, so just steward the story. And so I just love that you opened with that. That was so cool. My question is, if you don't have an agent, but you're a first time, you're submitting to a publishing company for the first time, do you provide any kind of like someone to kind of guide a novice through this process, or is that something that should be put on the author to do their homework and see what is all expected?
Yeah, well, one, I love just how God works, that there was a connection there. It's so wonderful to hear. He is certainly giving us all messages and encouragement that we need. And no, we don't provide anyone to kind of guide you in that process. We do have a lot of information on our submissions page, which should give you what you need for us specifically. I don't know if how much of that would translate to other houses as well, but yeah, that should be able to give you enough information. And there are definitely a lot of resources out in the world. If you Google and find some things, I think Jane Friedman is a really great resource. If you look up her stuff, she's really helpful. Just trying to find one or two people that you can really trust online that can guide you, I think is helpful instead of trying to look at all of the things that people say.
There's always a wealth of information, but yeah, getting like the exact thing, your questions answered is really helpful. Do you do your submission windows once a year, twice a year? What does that look like?
So far, it's been once a year. We usually receive an influx of submissions that can kind of get us through that publishing year. So this will probably be the last submission window until probably later next year.
Okay, that's helpful. And then, um, like what could a writer, you said earlier, like 1 to 2 months usually after a submission, and then for a nonfiction writer specifically, they don't necessarily have their book completed. So do you set those deadlines for them of like to have some sort of time frame that you're looking at in terms of turnaround? Or is there some freedom in that for nonfiction writers to finish on their time frame?
Yeah, so generally, the date that someone signs their contract, they have 5 months to complete the book. And
Oh, okay.
generally, they have some lead time before that as well, because their contract effective date might be different from the day that they sign it, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So they could generally have 5 months, probably a little bit more, but we are flexible. We don't believe rushed work is always the best work. So if an author did need more time, we could talk about it on the front end and make sure that they have the time that they need to complete that book without feeling rushed and just make sure that it's what God wants it to be as well.
Yeah. Yeah, that's helpful to kind of think about that in terms of how far maybe you should get in your proposal or in your writing after submitting. So that's helpful. Anyone else have any questions for Madison?
Of course, you know I will always have a question.
Carrie always comes through.
Sorry, I'm kind of sick, so I'm not putting my face on. I look kind of gross. But anyway, so the nonfiction, generally speaking, when I this kind of Kara asked this question, and I'm maybe asking it in a different way, but um, nonfiction, generally speaking, when you submit a query, it's not completed. Fiction, it generally is. Do you have like a specific guideline? I was just kind of glancing at your website real quick. Does a fiction book need to be complete to do the query for you?
Fiction book, yes. We would like
Okay.
to have it completed, or at the very least, the majority of it completed, just so we can
Mhm.
get kind of a glimpse into what the book is and what the
Okay.
writer's intention is.
Okay.
And that nonfiction is what she was saying was like about a 5 month-ish turnaround time after.
Writing process, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, the website says that the book submissions are closed right now, but please subscribe. Does that mean just get on the mailing list and do you send out information about when the window opens again? Or is there more details that come if you're like subscribed to the website?
Yeah, so that's referring to our Substack, which is where we kind of share more in-depth updates with our subscribers. So if you subscribe to Substack, you wouldn't miss it. It would be in there and kind of give more information about how to submit and what that looks like as well. Yeah, that's our Substack.
Okay.
So we know that um, you obviously publish books, but do you all have do you accept submissions for, like, I know you have a literary journal as well, and then I don't know if you have a blog or if that's your Substack, but can writers submit articles for publication that are just a little less time intensive and submit and be a part of some of your digital print options?
Yeah, so we have both an online literary journal and an imprint literary journal. And I will share the link to that because I actually do not manage it. Our lovely publishing assistant, Rosa, does. But yes, if you do not want to write a book or you need time to write your book, We do indeed have another way to submit poetry, essays, flash fiction, you name it. And there should be a lot of information in there. And then we also have our Substack that I will share too.
Yeah, and just for our listeners, I will put these links in our show notes as well. Now, are the windows open for your literary journals the same as for your book publishing side, or does that open up more often throughout the year?
Yeah, so those submission windows are different. I believe in December we will be opening the print literary journal. And then I want to say that we have 2 submission windows for the online literary journal that will open. And those should be on the website as well. Yeah, the print journal submissions will open January 1st. And then make sure I get the dates right. And then the online literary submissions open again December 1st. That was the December one.
Okay. All right. That's good to know. Very
I
good.
have one more question, if I could.
Go ahead.
So you're almost like a boutique publisher. Is that what we would call you?
Yeah,
It's
small
okay.
independent publisher.
And are you pretty much traditional? Do you do a hybrid? What is that process like? Is it more just strictly the traditional publishing
Yeah, we do follow the
process?
traditional model. So we won't do advances, but we do offer all of our authors a royalty deal. And they're not expected
Okay.
to pay for any of the
Okay.
publishing process.
Okay.
Madison, we talked a little bit just kind of about the behind the veil kind of feeling that writers often have when it's about putting their words out into the world. And do you have any like final words of encouragement that you might offer to writers who are interested in, I mean, even if it's not the end goal of being published, but just putting your art into the world, what would you say to those writers?
Yeah, well, it's so interesting because I kind of have my foot in both worlds. As a writer, just facing all of the same struggles and doubts and no's and all the discouraging things that come with that. And then one foot in the publishing world where I do get to see people's dreams come true. And something that I think that is so important that God gave me for publishing specifically is if my love can conquer death, can't it also conquer the publishing industry? So even if you're scared
True.
of the publishing world, I think it's helpful to know that he's in control even of that. And just putting your art out there, it's so scary. It's a very vulnerable thing. But it does matter. I think that that's been a huge question that I've had to sit with during all those really uncomfortable, hard things is, well, does this matter? And it does. Your dreams matter, your creative dreams matter. And I just posted about it on my Instagram of, I think all of those dreams and those hopes mean something, even if nothing comes of it. Because every single one requires you to reach out and beyond yourself and toward God, and he always reaches back. And you're never the same afterward. So even if that particular hope or that particular dream didn't actually have the outcome or the fruit that you wanted out in the world, it meant something if it changed you and it changed your relationship with God. And so I think that's a big part of the creative process. It's just opening yourself up to that and knowing that it is something that you do in partnership with him, you co-create. So I think that's the encouragement that I would like to give, is that it's not always about those outcomes. That's not always what determines the worth of something. It is, did it change you? Was it important to you? Did it change your relationship to God? Did it matter to God? And it did. So I think that's important, just to make sure that you're finding those different ways of seeing value. because it is hard if you don't get the validation all the time. It's really tough to keep going, but creating is important, whether 1,000 people read the words or just one or just you. It matters.
Oh, that's so beautiful. A hearty amen. I agree. And I think that's such a great, great way to end our conversation on that high note. So thank you, Madison, so much for your time and sharing just your heart and piercing the veil for us. We feel like it's been torn. So, especially at least in terms of Calla Press, we understand what you guys are about and we appreciate that a lot.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me. It's a joy just to come gather in community, and I appreciate the opportunity. And I hope that this could encourage someone and help you as well, because I know publishing is scary, but I don't want it to be.
Yeah, you've taken a lot of the mystery away, so we appreciate that.
Mhm.
All right. Thank you all. Thank you again, Madison.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so
Thanks.
much.
Have a good day.
Thanks. Bye bye.